Welcome to another episode of Season 3 of the Panjwai Podcast. As usual, you can find our episodes on YouTube, Facebook, and your favorite podcast platform, whether that's Spotify or Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio. You pick it, we're there.
If you want to support the podcast financially, we've set up a few ways for you to do so this season. You can become a patron by hopping over to patreon.com/the Panjwai Podcast and sign up for a small monthly donation. If you want to make a one-time donation, you can find us on Venmo at the Panjwai Podcast. And last but not least, we've got a small selection of merchandise in our store. So if you head over to thepanjwaipodcast.com and click on the store tab, you'll see stickers and other merchandise, and who knows what might come down the pipeline.
All that I can hope is you take me with you when you go. I guess I should have known I can't leave with you when you go. Now Cow Island is awfully quiet, with your screen door staying closed. And if I learned French like you told me, baby, I would hear your ghost.
I mean, one thing I've noticed is the difference between undergraduates and like graduate students. You know, when you spend a lot of time with undergraduates, like everything is so I can change the world and I'm different and we're gonna lead this change. And graduate students are like, bro, fuck off. I'm so tired.
Yeah.
I'm just here to graduate. Like, shut up.
Yeah, dude, you don't even know life problems yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Not had to sweat property taxes in New Jersey yet.
yeah, I mean, anything. I mean, shit. I mean, I can remember being a freshman in college. Like, I thought it was the most awesome thing ever. I'm like, wait a minute. How well I do or don't do is completely dependent on me now. You know what I mean? And there was a lot of things that I failed at, and there was a lot of things I took my licks and kept on ticking, but you know, like I wasn't ready to go into the Army at 18 years old.
Fuck no.
You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, looking back on it now, I know I definitely wasn't ready when I joined. I was 19 when I joined, and that was almost too young for me. Like, I wasn't a very emotionally mature kid, so it definitely was a little too early on, but that's okay.
yeah, but I mean, hey, man, I know some guys, you know, my peer class, some are still in, some of them got out, you know, early, but super successful, sharp guys who came in right out of high school. You know what I mean?
And some guys just have that maturity, you know, even at that young age, but most of us don't.
Yeah.
I would have been a very fit soldier coming out of high school, but I would not have been a very mature soldier.
Yeah,
of course, I wasn't very mature.
I would have gotten strong by doing lots of wrong. Like, I would have been the guy. Like, you know, I would have just been that dipshit private who was just an absolute stud because he just fucked. He was like, okay, you're going to punish me with PT, whatever. Like,
Right.
No problem. I mean,
man.
it's going to suck. I know that, but yeah, I mean, everything kind of worked out the way it should have with me. You know, I got to do the college thing, which was great. And then I got to, you know, teach and do a couple things before I went in the military. So,
Yeah.
Well, that's a perfect segue.
Yeah, I think
to
exactly
introduce
where I
our
was going to jump in.
Because
So
that's usually where
we're,
we start these things, is kind of going into that kind of background. But Luke, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest, since you know him a little bit better.
So we're sitting here with Zack Harrison, who has graciously decided to sit down and have a chat with us. Zack, you have the privilege of being our second guest from the American military. That was a part of Medusa, but you're our second guest that was partaking Sperwan Ghar, which of course Curtis and I got to call home for 9 months, and thanks to the work of guys like you and our previous guest Tom Young. Yeah, I
remember Tom.
Got to live comfortably in the schoolhouse that you guys had to bust ass to take. So,
yeah.
But we appreciate you coming on. The way we usually begin these things is we just give somebody a chance to give the short elevator speech version of their military career. Yours is a little bit more storied, so if you don't care to give us the spiel about why you joined the military, what kind of path you took through the military, and what your career ended up looking like, and how you came to Panjwai.
Cool. Well, first off, thank you guys for thanks for having me on, man. It's a pleasure to be here. I remember Tom Young very well.
He's a good dude.
It's been a cool experience, man. As this has kind of developed, just seeing more of the posts you guys put up and memories, and I remember that place, and it's been pretty cool, man. It's been a good reminder of what that place was like from start to finish. So, kind of my pathway into the Army, man. I didn't grow up wanting to join the military. I really didn't. I went to an ROTC or a JROTC high school, not by choice. I was kind of forced to go there by my mom and dad, which turned out to be a great decision by them. And I just didn't like the military. I don't know really what it was about it. It was a problem with authority, more than likely. So I decided to go to school, went to college, played football for a few years, got my degree in history, and then started working in the school district in Virginia and coaching high school football and baseball, which is really what I wanted to do. So I was a teacher because I wanted to be a coach. And then I started in August of 2001, and we all know what happened a month after that. So I knew after 9/11 I was going to join. I just didn't know what I was going to do. I had a time commitment with the school district that I signed up with. It was 2 years, so I spent that time just kind of researching, figuring out what I wanted to do, and decided I wanted to become a U.S. Army Green Beret and go to Afghanistan and fight the Taliban and Al Qaeda, where they planned those attacks, and that was kind of what I wanted to do. So I got an 18 X-ray contract, and I went off to boot camp in 2003, and that just kind of led me into just over 10 years of a really fun part of my life. So I've been out for about 7 or almost 8 years now, but it was an awesome chapter in my life for sure.
Yeah, I think you're our first guest who comes from the SF background. So for folks who maybe aren't as tapped into the knowledge, what was that process like for you personally? I know this changes all the time, I'm sure. But what was it like for you to go through selection and things like that, and especially since you came in on the 18X contract instead of coming as 11 Bravo first or whatever? Right.
Yeah. So basically, the 18 X-ray contract, I don't know what it's like now, but back then, it was just a fast track to get to SFAS, which is Special Forces Assessment and Selection. So you go to boot camp as an 11 Bravo, infantry guy. Went straight to static line jump school right after boot camp. So 3 weeks there, and then PCS to Bragg from Benning, and went to we had a pre-selection course. It was about a 4-week course where all these 18 X-rays were fundamentally getting smoked every day, all day long, and really learning the skills needed to be successful at selection, i.e., land navigation, and some other things that some people coming off the street, like myself, I didn't do a lot of camping in the woods or Boy Scouts or stuff like that. So learning how to tie knots and how to pack a rucksack and stuff like that, and that course, and then went to selection. Was fortunate enough to make it through that, and then I got assigned my MOS, which was an 18 Bravo. I was a weapons sergeant, and went to the weapons sergeant course. That was about 4 or 5 months at the time. You do a small unit tactics portion, which is about, I think it's about 5 or 6 weeks, where you're learning, patrolling in rural environments. Language school was tucked in there, and then SEER school as well. I think that was pretty much all of them. And then, I think all in all, it was about a year and a half start to finish. from boot camp to finishing the Q course.
Damn, that's pretty quick from civilian to long tab. Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was that
the
transition?
Bravo because it was an 18 Bravo was 4 months, and I was like, man, that medical stuff sounds cool, and you can do stuff with it after the military. I was like, but theirs is like a year and a half almost.
Yeah,
and I'm like, and I didn't know how long I wanted to stay in at the time either. And weapons sounded cool, so that's what I picked. Yeah.
I mean, how was that mindset shift? I mean, to go from like a school teacher to, SF in less than 2 years.
Ooh, man, that's a good question. I tell you, I knew after the attacks on 9/11, I knew almost immediately afterwards, like, I'm going to go do something. I don't know what it is. I had time to figure out kind of what I wanted to do. And I also had time to kind of make sure, like, hey, this is a serious decision that you're making. And it's, there's consequences that can happen from this. And, I spent a lot of time in kind of self-reflection, like, hey, are you willing to do this? It's a big change. And it wasn't that hard for me because I didn't have any children. I wasn't married at the time. I had a job, and I did enjoy my job, but it wasn't that hard to cut away from it. So, but yeah, I mean, I think, part of the physical and mental toughness, I think some of that I had, developed in me through years of team sports and stuff. But yeah, I don't care who you are, how in shape you are. If you don't want it 100%, you'll find a way to not make it.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, that's what I've seen in my experience as well. But it was definitely a process that I went through.
Yeah.
Because it's not like a street fight or a bar fight, when you're 18, 19 years old, where you just get your feelings hurt. You know what I mean? Or your pride hurt, or you get, a broken nose or something like that. Like, it's different. And I didn't really have any any basis off of that. I didn't know like what it was like to be shot at or, shoot back at people, all that stuff. So, but I wanted it, and I knew I wanted it. So, I was glad I made the decision to go for it,
So when you got to your first unit, so the Panjwai deployment wasn't your first deployment. So you got one deployment in there before the 2006 rotation, right?
Yeah, I did. And it was, it wasn't a very long one because when I finished the Q course, third group was deployed. And I signed into third group immediately after, finishing the Q course, and was just waiting for a rotator bird to take me over there, So it wasn't a full 8. They were doing 8-month rotations back then. So I got over there, I think, right after halfway through it. So I got a little bit of experience. It was kind of the winter time. We were up in Aruzgan, seasonal fighting. It wasn't, I mean, I definitely learned a lot in those 4 months, no doubt. But it definitely wasn't as busy as the next one was for sure. So yeah.
Now, were you with the same ODA in both deployments, or was there a change there?
No. So when I got over there, they basically, it was funny. They assigned me to Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, and they were completely filled up with 18 Bravos. Typically an ODA has 2 of each MOS. And they flew me over there. The sergeant major was like, your ass is going out to a fire base. And I was like, thank God.
Right.
So he picked, I don't know how that manning worked, but he picked one, and it was ODA 333, which was, everyone who was on the team called it 3X. So I went out there with them. And then when we came back, I was still attached with them. And then ODA 31, which is where I met Rusty and all the guys from Medusa. One of their Bravos left for SWIC, so they only had one. So the sergeant major pulled me over, and that's my second trip, I went with 3-1 with, like Rusty and Bill and, Dave, all the guys from Medusa.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So how much time did you have with them before you left?
We had, let's see, probably 2 months.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we came back from that trip. Everyone went on leave, for 2 or 3 weeks, came back. Kind of the cycle was as soon as you come back, it's, you're refitting and you're starting your next training cycle before the next rotation is kind of how it was back then. Excuse me. So I was lucky enough to get a month of team training with the new team before we went over there on that trip. And, we had no idea what we were going to do. We were told we were going to spin Bulldog, and going to be doing missions, down on the border the whole trip. And the next thing you know, we land. We're like, we're not going there. So, okay, cool. But it was good because, everyone does the same stuff tactics wise. You know what I mean? There's small little techniques that certain teams may do. They may task organize vehicles and equipment a little bit differently. So it was good, man. To get a month training with them before we went over there for sure.
And what were some of your first impressions of Rusty and those other guys?
Well, the cool thing was Bill Brown, who was a friend of mine even before we made it to third group. I was lucky enough he was on that team. And he was kind of like a mentor and a big brother to me. So when I went over there, I remember one day we went fishing out on his boat, and he was just kind of telling me, he's like, hey, man, like this is because he was with them during, the previous rotation. When I went to that one ODA, he got kicked to them.
Okay.
So he had like 4 months with them as well, the rotation prior. So he knew the guys, you know what I mean? He knew the nucleus of the team. He knew Rusty. Sure. We had a new team sergeant at the time, but it was, I felt like I fell into place pretty quickly. They were a good team. They were funny. Like there were some super strong personalities, man, like super strong personalities. But I loved it. You know what I mean? And, right, wrong, or indifferent, I was one of them. I was a new guy, so I knew my role. I was never one of those new guys who spoke unless he needed to type thing. But it was a good, strong team that had good experience. Right. And I was really comfortable, going on a rotation with, the 2 or 3 senior guys there that knew what the hell they were doing,
Nice.
So yeah, it was a good team. It was a good team.
So you guys got to Kandahar, and you're kind of you're doing your thing for a little bit. But how long were you guys there until you started getting the rumor of the big Medusa operation? Because that was kind of my memory's really foggy on everything, so forgive me.
Yeah.
But it was a kind of a quick notice for y'all that you were going out there, right? Or did you know ahead of time?
Yeah, I mean, like we planned the whole rotation, up until, it's been a while now, so my memory may be a little bit off. It was either right before we left or right when we got to CAF. Mm-hmm. We were supposed to be going to spin Bulldog down on the border. And we were supposed to be, running missions and trying to intercept, there was a big pipeline coming in and out. I think it was Quetta. And Spin B was like the only thing between, I think, Quetta and Kandahar.
Sounds
so,
right.
And then Highway 1, that goes up. But, we land. We're like, hey, we're going to go to Gecko for a few days, which I think is now what they changed it to Firebase Mahalik. But Tom Mahalik had just been killed like a few months before we got there. So they hadn't officially renamed the Firebase yet. So when I say Gecko, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Tom. It's just what it was called when we were there. So, yeah, I mean, we started hearing rumors, and then the next thing you know, it's like we are in full planning. Like rumors for a day, full planning, and all we were doing was like we were getting our gun trucks ready for wherever we were going. So the team, we had a ton of work to do to get, primarily get the vehicles ready, but there was just a lot of prep work to do before we blasted out anywhere.
Right.
The vehicles were rigged up by the previous team. Gunners have their preferences on how their turrets are set up. Like a bunch of different stuff, and but it was not long, man. It was not long, and then the planning phase started, and then I didn't know what the hell. I'd never heard of the district before.
Right.
Like I didn't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty quick, man.
Now, whose idea was it to drive across the desert?
And
how popular was that idea at first?
Well, I mean, so me being a junior E6 at the time, first rotation with the team, I was busy doing other stuff.
Sure.
As far as like the big concept of the operation, but. Drive through the desert. I'm like, I don't know, man. I think everyone underestimated what the hell that thing was. You know what I mean? I really do. But I think General Boldock kind of pushed, hey, I want you to do a big push south, cut west, and then come north to try to pin these guys when the Canadians start pushing. So I think the concept of the operation was good, but I mean, you know how that works, man.
Sure.
But like that desert was,
Dude, it's so hard to describe it to people. I mean, like, yeah, it's crossing a desert, and in their mind, like Mojave or something like that. I'm like, no, like think Sahara, like.
Yes, like
mind blowing.
I've never. I mean, I've seen the southeast or southwest deserts of the U.S. At that time, that was the really only true deserts I've even seen, and none of them compare.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're not.
Yeah, not even close.
There's only a few places that I've seen out in California that have like dunes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And there's not a lot of them. And I could be wrong. Like, I'm sure someone could tell me there's tons of them, but I've never experienced anything like that. Like it was just. It's like something in a movie that you see, like the wary stranger, like dragging his feet with holding like an old canteen, and it's like, oh my God, there's another one. Like every time you crest the hill, you're like, it's got to be the last one.
Right?
No, it's not. You're going to be stuck 10 more times, and it's going to take. Oh man, dude, some of the most frustrated I've ever been in my life was in those like 5 days driving through that shit.
Yeah. I imagine those like low body trucks are getting like high siding on the top of the dunes all the time.
Yeah. I mean, mine almost tipped over once. I mean, I started to jump out of it. It didn't roll. I mean, thank God. But we had to take everything off of the turret so we could hook the winch, because we didn't know when we hooked the winches up if it was going to roll or not. I'm like, well, we can't break the gun. We're going to need that. Like, and eventually got it down, but it was just the digging, man. And like, then we had, I can't remember how many A&A we had, at least one full company. You know what I mean? And you know how it is, man. We were trying to control everything. Like they had trucks that were easier, so there was times we would let them scout, and then the next thing you know, like we're driving through and everyone's stuck, and it's like, thank God there's no buildings around here, and this is the most desolate place on the planet. Because if we got shot, ambushed right now, we are, not good.
Did you guys ever get hit going across the desert, or did you?
We didn't. We found. We saw at one point this small group of buildings. It was like, I wouldn't even call it a village, man. It was just a bunch. It looked like ruins, actually.
Yeah.
And there was this huge boulder that was completely flat, and we drove past it, and you could see burn marks on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and we sent some. I can't remember if one of our gun trucks with a couple A&A trucks went over there, and I don't know if they saw the booster dunnage but they could tell like they were using that rock to like sight in their RPGs and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then we saw some people. I think there was a couple pop shots, but fundamentally, we got in like one small engagement. But fundamentally, the biggest threat there was just getting the truck stuck endlessly.
Yeah. I mean, if you had to guess, as a percentage of the time, how much time were you stuck and how much time were you moving?
I would say probably 20% of the time we were stuck. I mean,
yeah.
Okay.
Realistically, I mean, you could hit some patches out there that you could tell you could start reading the terrain and figuring it out, but there was other times it's like there's no other way.
Yeah.
And now you got a gun truck that's 12, 13,000 pounds with, they got, their
And
clearance.
those were like stripped down too. They weren't like full on, like, mine.
Yeah, but I mean, they were loaded to the brim with ammo, man. Because, we didn't, we had no idea really what was going to happen. So like they were pretty heavily loaded out. And then, someone's vehicle broke down. I mean, we had to fly in a mechanic. He ended up determining that the vehicle was deadline. We moved out, called in dropped a bomb on it. The mechanic spilled like diesel all over he spilled like diesel fuel all over his feet, and then his feet got like burned. It was just,
oh jeez.
It was a 5-day selection event, 24 hours a day. Like that's what it was. That's what it felt like. Seriously, I'm like, well, thank God I went to Team Week at SFAS because I know what this is like now. Like,
yeah,
it was brutal, man.
Oh man.
So before you guys made the trek, I mean, what was the intel situation? Like, did you have any idea what to expect? I mean, I know some guys had been into Panjwai before. Did they try to kind of tell you what to expect?
Well, I mean, when we ripped out with 7th Group, we had like, typically what we would do back then is you have like 2 or 3 days, cross-pollination with the teams before you officially take the base over and take over operations, and they rip out. I mean, you guys know the deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we knew from them and their 18 Fox, their intel guy, that when we got to Gecko and they knew we were going out there, they're like, hey man, like, that's where Tomahawk was killed. Every time they pushed in there, they met heavy resistance, and it was fundamentally like, when we went in there, or at the time we assumed operations, it was fundamentally an open. I mean, the Taliban and anyone else operated freely in the area, fundamentally.
Yeah.
The biggest intel we kept getting was during our, the planning phases, like how many of these fighters they think are massing, because, the big picture was, hey, they were going to do a summer push to retake Kandahar. Like they were going to take the city over. And basically what they were doing was they stopped pushing in all these fighters, these foreign fighters, and these fighters coming in from Pakistan to the other traditionally hot areas. And they started bringing them in from Helmand and down from Aruzgan, and like even in through from like Quetta, going past Kandahar into the Panjwai area. They were massing there for that summer offensive to take the city over. And I think the estimate we got was, hey man, it could be anywhere from the initial estimate, it could be anywhere from 500 to 2,000 or whatever. And then as we got closer to the mission, we learned it was closer to the higher end of that. it was at least well over 1,000.
Hmm.
You know,
so what was going through your head, like especially if you guys closed in on Panjwai and when you start setting up those first positions and things like that, like what was going through your head, knowing that you're walking into a hornet's nest?
Well, I mean, the Canadians kicked off the entire mission. You know, the big concept of the operation was we were going to come in from the south and be either a blocking or diversionary. Primarily diversionary to get them to we wanted to get them off the major roads so the Canadians could push.
Mm-hmm.
So we were trying to initially bring them down to us, and they just, basically turned all their guns to the east, man, and just hit the Canadians with everything they had,
Yeah.
Then there was on the first day, the Canadians lost a few guys, had quite a few injured, and they had a blue on blue gun run. There was F-16 went down. Maybe that was the next day after that. So there was a lot of for lack of a better term, kind of chaotic stuff going on.
It wasn't going well for the main effort.
No, it was not.
Yeah.
No, it really was not. Yeah, man. It's one of those things that, hopefully, it was hopefully that they weren't going to get pinned down, but they did. And, then we went in and we learned it was more of a kind of a shit show than we originally thought it was going to be. I guess is the easiest way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I know reading the few things that I've read, I know a lot of the estimates were that most of them were north of the river in what's now Zari, the White Schoolhouse and all that kind of stuff. But it turns out that more of them were in the Horn near Sperwan Ghar, which is a lot closer where you guys were than where a lot of the Canadians were. So when did you guys start to realize that there were quite a few guys south of the river too?
I would say that was probably I don't know, within the first few days, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, within the first few days, because we actually had some guys squirt on us. We saw some spotters and they squirted, and we went to this antenna tower and found some good intel in there that there was people we knew they were around.
Yeah.
And then when we kind of broke into near Reggae, where we staged before we kind of went up into Sperwan Ghar. We hadn't really been hit yet, but we knew, man, you could we had ISR footage we had ISR footage. We had Tom and his guys doing their thing. We were getting intelligence dumps, and quite frankly, man, you could feel it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know it sounds kind of weird to say that, but I knew when we went up there, there was a fight. You could just feel it. Something in the air. You could just feel it. It was too calm. It was just, it was too pristine. The wind was just a few miles. You know what I mean? And it's yeah, but
and Reggae is this weird spot. It's right up against the agricultural zone, and it's peaceful, but it's not. Everyone there is they're not shitheads, but there's a lot of them there.
Mm-hmm.
There's they live there, and then they go and they play around in the Horn. It's when you're near Reggae, there's a weird feeling. It's I'm safe here because they don't shit where they eat. But I know that the minute I step over into the fields, it's on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Reggae, that was always one of those ones that was they're so close to where we're at and where we're going to be. There's no way that they're not tied in somehow, some way.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And they fundamentally, it was kind of a strategic area for them because before all the routes had been cleared to go north, there was only one way to get out of that place, with any speed whatsoever, and it was right past Reggae.
Right.
That village, and it was well within, machine gun range and RPG range, and Riley Stevens, rest his soul, man. He could find something anywhere, and every time we went into Reggae, he found something. We found something. I mean, they were staging weapons out of there. They were staging IEDs out of there. You know what I mean? They were, it was. I won't say the entire village was bad at the time. I think half of them probably just didn't really understand what was getting ready to go down.
Right.
And hell, we didn't either. So, but yeah. So
can you? Go ahead, Curtis.
I was just gonna, to bring it back to when we were there in 12. Reggae was this weird. It was peaceful. We never got into a firefight in Reggae. Or we split them into two, big and little Reggae. But what we had heard was that essentially that's like where they lived. So like there was never any fighting in Reggae, but as soon as you left Reggae,
200 meters north of 200
meters, then it was game on.
It was on, yeah.
But they're like, that's where they sleep, and they don't want to have gunfights where they sleep, so they leave us alone when we're in Reggae. But as soon as we leave, it's on.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that didn't really change in 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, man. I mean, hey, they knew even when we got there. Like when we got there before, like I said, man, any engineering or demolition had been done to clear any lanes of anything. Mm-hmm. It was. I mean, they could literally get right up to the base of that mountain. If we didn't have ISR, it would have been probably a different outcome. And what I mean by that is like, it's without that, it would have been completely. We wouldn't have been able to hold anything without that. But yeah, man, it was a every time I step into that area or in a vehicle, either on foot, off of that, Sperwan Ghar, man, it's just like, I would imagine it's the way the guys in Vietnam felt, like you have no idea they could be 15 meters from you in a ditch and you never see them. Mm-hmm. Like people don't think of Afghanistan as places like that. And I'm like, there's places like that.
Yeah.
It's not the jungle, but
it's
where, I mean, it might as well be.
In the heat of summer, it's real close. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
But yeah, so we knew there was a lot of guys south. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys were staging up in the Reggaes. What was the movement like to Sperwan Ghar? Like, I'm assuming if the village is laid in like they did in 2012, you would have struck west and then north on that more open terrain.
Yes.
And come into that schoolhouse that was to the south of Sperwan Ghar, right?
Yeah. So Reggae, you come up. You were kind of channelized by an irrigate. There was a ditch, and then there was like the first row of walls for the first structures that were, I want to say, just to the southwest of like the bottom of the hill, and then there was a path that went up, and that's the one we ended up driving up when we ended up taking the hill. But the first time we went in there, man, we all ran black on ammo, and we had to break contact and move back past Reggae, set up a RON site, and then get resupplied. And then I think it was the next day we went back in there. Yeah, I mean, I knew the first day we drove up there, man, like I was telling you, I knew, I think we all did, like this is kind of a movement to contact right now. Not like, hey, we're just going to drive our vehicles nice and easy up on this hill, like, and nothing's going to happen. Like,
So you care to run us through those first few moments, like when you guys started pushing up, and I mean, how soon did you take contact? What kind of contact did you take? Like, did you care to run us through that first day, essentially?
Yeah. So the first thing I heard, we were basically moving up in a wedge, right? Mm-hmm. So like,
very tactical of you.
I was on the left flank in my truck. Rusty's vehicle was on the right flank, and then I believe we had Dave. Dave's truck was up point, and then I just heard a 240 rip off. Like I was looking left, like kind of towards the mountain and the buildings, and then I heard a 240 rip off, and I'm like, I just kind of look over, and I hear it rip off again, and I see it's Rusty, and then I kind of see what he's shooting at. And then he comes over the radio. We're troops in contact, and I hadn't heard anything. I hadn't heard an incoming round or a shot, nothing. And I'm like, well, I don't know what's happening over there, but I really think something's getting ready to kick off over here on the left. Mm-hmm. And then the next thing you know, they started. They shot an RPG at my truck. It landed, I don't know, within 10 meters of the driver's door. I thought it, fucked up my buddy Dave Smith, who was driving, and it peppered me in the shoulder with some shrapnel, and that was their initiation of the ambush. I think they shot once to get Rusty just to start engaging, and they basically started volley firing RPGs at us, and they were pretty good. And they actually had airbursts. Was my first time ever seeing those.
Yeah.
So they were shooting airburst RPGs at us as well, and just you could just see it. They go off. I'd never really seen one before in person, so it's kind of weird. It's like you hear it, and it's like you look up, and by the time you look up, you just you can see it hit the flechettes hitting the ground and stuff. But it's like. The old World War II movies with the bombers when they're shooting flak, like that's what it looks like, just a black plume of smoke. And then we basically just we maneuvered a little bit on them during that engagement, but they were on almost three sides of us, and the only side they really weren't on was the one we came in.
Yeah,
and we didn't have. I mean, it was. We weren't going anywhere at that point in time, so we made the decision to break contact. So we popped back. I went to Kandahar for the night, came back, rode back out the next morning, and then that day we pushed back up there like an hour later.
And so you left because of the shrapnel, right? Just to get it patched up?
Yeah. It was, it was nothing really, but my medic Riley at the time was like, "Hey, dude, like you're going to get that flushed out or whatever it was." So, and then came back the next day. We reloaded everything and we went right back up there. And that was the day we actually got the vehicles up on the top. That was a pretty interesting day as well. Yeah.
How did that play out? Did you guys have a little bit more of a plan to push forward? Was it a little more organized, or?
Well, we had more air support.
Okay.
And we had,
that makes a big difference.
Yeah. We had more air support. And then I think if my memory serves me correctly, we pushed some of our Afghanis up on one side to kind of take it away from them being able to be on three sides of us, versus two. And the rate of, I would say the fire that day was not nearly as intense and as consistent as it was the day before. But the first vehicle drove up. My vehicle went up, and as soon as we crested, that's when our third truck hit an IED that was in on that pathway. And we just heard it and saw the plume of smoke and could see, you turned back and could see the debris in the air. Fuck, well, we had just crested the hill, and we're getting shot at too from, a couple different areas up there. We had people dismounted. I know Rusty had like 3 or 4 guys and some ANA. They were dismounting and they were moving up as well. They had a ANA guy step on a mine and blew his leg off. So it was pretty hectic, but that was actually fairly fast from what I remember it, from start to finish, and that's where Jude Voss, there's a guy named Greg Stubbe who was an attachment of ours. He was in that vehicle. He was a turret gunner that in the vehicle that got hit, and he was in there burning in the turret. And Jude, who was in the truck behind us, Jude was one of our combo guys. Went up there and got him out of the turret and stuff like that, and under fire, and I believe he got the Silver Star for it.
I think it got upgraded, didn't it, to a DSC?
It may have. I'm not sure, man. I have reconnected with Jude recently on Instagram, so it's kind of cool. But I didn't ask him.
It's not a question you ask. Hey, man, your award?
Yeah. He's a great dude.
How much
though,
of a
man.
hero are you now?
Yeah, he's the most humble. He's one of the most humble men I've ever met in my life. So he was a great guy to work with. But yeah, so we got up there, and we eventually pushed in and cleared the building. What we think happened is they just wanted to take some shots at us once we crested the hill, and they just went down the backside and disappeared.
Oh yeah,
is what I think happened. There wasn't like a huge prolonged fight once we were up there. So secured it. We flew in some guys from a mine detection unit.
Smart.
Came out and swept the whole dam. I think they swept the whole damn hill.
I hope so. Yeah.
And cleared out a bunch of AP mines that they had put up.
Now Greg was the one that was most seriously hurt, but Jude was hurt too.
Yeah, Jude had he got some burns. I know for sure. And Stubbe was, from what I heard, I was up, so I didn't see any of this happening. I just heard it all on the radio. You know what I mean? Like, we had shit we had to do up there. And we had a dismounted element that we needed to support with our heavy guns in case they get, you know what I mean? Right. And they had support down there. Yeah, man, Greg Stubbe, he fought tooth and nail to come attach with us on that trip. You know what I mean? And he was a 10th group guy. He was just in Afghanistan at the right, when we were, and he wanted to come out and we could use him. So,
yeah,
Rusty decided to bring him, and he got jacked up, man. But he's a stud. He fought through it, and I've kind of lost contact with him, but Greg was always just an awesome guy, man. Like, he's just an awesome human being. So I hope he's out there doing well.
I know I picked up his book not too long ago. Haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I bet it's good, man. I would bet it's good. He's very well spoken. He just, I've seen some of the stuff he did with some of his hunting shows and stuff like that. He's just, and that genuine and nice of a guy, like, that's who he is off camera, for sure. So I'll have to get that book as well, man.
Now, how long before that you were able to get him medevaced?
I think the medevac was probably by the time he got hit, I'd say he was probably packaged up and out within I would say probably 30 minutes. I think they
That's
had
incredible.
birds. I think they had birds already spun up for us
Oh, okay.
based off what happened the day before. So I think they were loitering some air assets on a rotation.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Kandahar, Kandahar was a pretty quick burn time for them anyway. But they were in. I think what took longer than anything was just making sure that the HLZ was secured.
Did you know about the bomb in the hill?
The JDAM?
Yeah. I mean, we dropped it. We dropped it. Yeah, we knew it was up
Tom
there.
was telling me, I was like, what do you mean there's a JDAM in the hill? He's like, yeah, it's still there. I was like,
Yeah,
what the fuck?
2,000 pounder, man. Yeah, so the day before, the day we got in the first big contact,
Mm-hmm.
when we had to break contact, and that's when I had to fly back to Kandahar,
Mm-hmm.
and then came back the next day. That day, we knew there were guys on the hill, but we also knew there were guys kind of in like north and then west, kind of in like this C shape around us. So we dropped a couple bombs on top of the hill, and one of them didn't go off.
Yeah.
So they ended up like, it's crazy, man. Like, I haven't thought about that thing in that hill in years, but you're right. Like, completely forgot about that. But yeah, they backfilled it, and they're like, yeah, it's good. Like, hey, do you understand it's going to take half of this top of this portion of this hill is going to blow completely off,
Completely gone.
if this thing detonates, like, we're putting sniper positions and like machine guns and shit up here, dude. Like,
Trucks.
we need to make sure. No, it's good. Okay, they just filled it.
Well, that was revealed to us via Tom, and I was thinking, like, the whole 9 months, just this 2,000-pound bomb sitting on the side of this hill. Like, imagine if it had just gone off.
Yeah.
Just like
Yeah, that would've been
the
bad.
whole HLZ, our schoolhouse, everything would have been covered in dirt.
Everybody's
that
ears would be bleeding.
Yeah.
What the fuck just happened?
Yeah. And
It would
we
take
were
us
like,
weeks to figure it out.
yeah. We were asking, like, well, how far down did it go?
Yeah.
I didn't go up there. You know what
Fuck
I mean?
no.
Like, and supposedly there was just this big hole, and it just went down, and I can't remember
Spilled it
if
in.
they got like a small tractor or whatever it was, something up there. I don't remember how they filled it, but they filled it. I definitely don't think they did it within the first few days we were up there, because
Yeah, because
They
Tom
were-
was talking about that it was the latrine. So they were shitting down the hole.
yeah. I mean, it was crazy, man, because like when we went into that schoolhouse, I have a CD somewhere that's got a bunch of pictures.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
I need to find it. I'll find it, man, and I'll send you guys some.
Yeah, that'd be great.
They're pictures from that whole mission.
Dude,
But I'll find them. In that schoolhouse, we went in. The first time I went in, there was this room, and they had burnt the entire room, and
Yep.
from floor to ceiling,
Mm-hmm.
and everything was just charred black.
Hmm.
And the Taliban had been writing. They were writing in the soot on the
Mhm.
walls, and there was handprints, and there was all this. It was kind of spooky, man.
Super spooky.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, it was.
But the remnants of that stuff was still there
Was it
when
really?
we were there. Yeah, like the upper reaches of the walls and like the ceiling and stuff like that. That was still there a little bit.
Yeah. It was just a strange place, man. You know what I mean? And then we immediately started building fighting positions and fortifying it, like, immediately.
What was
and they were attacking
as
us
you
the
guys
whole time.
kind of settled into the schoolhouse? Like, what was the next few days like for you guys? Because I mean, it wasn't over once you took that hill.
No, I mean, I would say it was almost 2 weeks.
Hmm.
We're pretty eventful up there. The first couple days, basically I found a low position right on like the north edge, overlooking all the marijuana fields, going to the main route and looking out over the Arghandab. And that's pretty much where we ate and slept for 3 or 4 days. You know what I mean? And we were pretty much fighting from our trucks. The schoolhouse, we immediately sandbagged the windows, put some machine guns on the roof, sandbagged them in, and then there was a little building, or a small compound that was on the footpath. I guess it would be the northeastern or the northern side, but kind of the eastern, where you could walk down, and right next to the hill butted up to it was a compound.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it's still there.
Oh yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, that was there the whole time. That was there the whole time we were there, as well, and another truck. So basically, we strong pointed the hill. And there was 2 ODAs up there. We had our A&A with us, and you know, they made some attempts, you know, to take the hill back, but they didn't take into account Spectre.
It was a new concept to them.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the things I will never forget, is for night after night after night after night, that Spectre gunship was dropping munitions, man, all over the place. You know, daytime we were using more Apaches and A-10s. We just, you know, using the big bombs. They were fighting us at 3. You know, they were getting pretty close. So during the daytime, we would just kind of like shoot rockets and do gun runs on them, and then at night, you know, they were probing a lot in the first couple nights, like how to get up close, what to do, and you know, I'll never remember sitting up in my turret on guard, man, like looking under my PBS 14s, like just watching Spectre circle and drop and boom. You know, and then I was looking for targets
too.
What's that?
So I'm glad you had to deal with PVS 14s too. That puts us on the same level.
Oh yeah, man. My first rotation, I had 7 Deltas, dude.
Dude, really? Even as SF, huh?
Yeah,
that makes me feel better, actually.
Yeah, a lot better. Quite.
And then I felt like a rock star when I got 14s.
I had 7 Deltas in Iraq, but the mount was broken, so I had to hold them with one hand and look through. They were basically like a broken down version of the 14. So I had a monocled night vision, but because that mount was broken, so I was driving through the deserts of Iraq holding my nods in one hand.
It's funny, man. The first pair of dual tubes I ever owned was when I was starting OTC.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. They were starting the 15. I believe they were the 15s. We had a couple sets of those on our team. We primarily gave them to our drivers.
That makes sense.
So especially in those types of areas where, you know, it's just so freaking rugged, they really need to be able to see well.
I feel like the rise of dual tubes in the Army was it was like almost overnight. It was like 1 year nobody had them. Next year's like, hey, what are those Ranger guys doing? And then suddenly like everybody had them, except for obviously, you know, conventional infantry guys.
Yep. Yeah, man. And I mean, they absolutely changed the game in every way, shape, and form. And you know, the stuff they have coming, I hear that they have now, the integrated, you know, they had integrated thermal layovers when I was in. But to hear how much they progressed and what they can do with just, you know, a set of nods, it's unbelievable.
It's crazy.
You know, we use the white phosphorus, the 31s, and you can almost, they're beautiful, man.
It's like putting sunglasses on.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And once you get them dialed in, and you know how to make adjustments based off the lighting conditions, like, you know, you can almost read a book with good ambient light, you know.
Well, that was the thing to me. I mean, I've spent thousands of hours under nods, and then the Apache, our eyepiece is it's green. It's thermal, but it's green. So like, I have so many hours of just staring at green imagery. The first time I put white phos nods on, I was like, it was complete like night and day. It was like daylight out, and I was like, this is incredible. Why don't we have this? Now they do, but it's just,
I don't know what the technology is behind it. But I have found way less eye fatigue.
Absolutely.
Just way less underneath the white, and I think they're more detailed. Like when you're target discriminating someone at a distance a little bit, you can definitely. They're just crisper for sure, but
I think up close the difference is fairly minimal. Like inside of 50 yards, I don't really see too. But it's the long range.
Yeah.
Like I can see that that's a mosque a mile away, whereas under greens I'd be like, it's a bunch of buildings kind of thing.
Funny story. So it's the first or second night we were up there. So we were on at that time over 50, probably 75% in our rest plan. Like we were up 75%. And I was on my turret, and they were the PAS 13 Bravos, the old big handheld thermals. You could mount them to crew serves and machine guns and guns like that. But I kept one in my turret, and I would just use it to spot at night. So, and I could also attach it to my Mark 19. And so I'm looking, and I see a heat signature, like multiple heat signatures, but they're way out. And you got to remember, at this time they didn't even issue us maps of the area. Like we didn't have maps, we didn't have GRGs, we didn't have overhead imagery, we didn't have anything. Like we had our compasses and our GPS, our Fortrexes and GPSs, but like we didn't have anything to really go off of. So I'm looking out, and I'm like, man, I remember studying the map. I'm like, they're on the other side of the river, and that's got to be...
It's like 2.5K.
Yeah, I was like, I just remember going, that's at least 3,000 meters. Like in my mind, I'm like, they're at least 3K.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing, and I keep like, at this time you're tired. You're like, shit, am I droning with, that's definitely multiple red heat signatures. So I switch over to the internal comms with the pilot, and I'm like walking him in. I'm talking him in, and he's not finding him, man. Like my depth perception is something's off. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm giving him an azimuth. I'm giving him like, hey, it's across like north of the river. He's not seeing him, and all of a sudden he's like, he kind of chuckles. He's like, hey man, it's 5 camels. And he came back. I was like, Roger that. I was like, were there any guys with the camels? I mean, usually they're moving with them, and like, we were at that time, man. Anyone who was moving in that area,
bad news.
Yeah,
they weren't there for good reasons.
Yeah. Just smoke the camels for good measure.
Yeah, but it was those first, the first week particularly was pretty interesting, man. And then we started pushing out on foot. We basically strong pointed it. We got engineers out there, and the next thing you know, we started getting supplies in.
Right.
You know what I mean? We started getting we thought we were in the freaking Ritz-Carlton when we got porta-johns and portable showers. You know what I mean? Like, the showers didn't come till way later, but it was rough, man. Like we were going to the bathroom, and like holes that were already dug, the same places they were using right before they left. It was like moon dust up there. Before they got all the gravel, it was literally, when you're walking on the first tier, all the driving that we did in the first couple days up there
just mixed it all up.
It was like this. It was like talcum powder. It was like foot powder.
Yeah.
And it in some spots, man, it would go up to like mid calf. you know, and like you would just get completely covered in this shit, and you couldn't avoid it. You know, this was before gravel got out there. Anything, we didn't have Hescos up, nothing.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's one of the things. Like one of my defining memories of Iraq was the moon dust, and we really didn't run into that as much in Afghanistan.
Sure, we did. We ran into it all the time, especially over like by Zangabad, like on the roads, like just outside Sperwan Ghar, and
not like en masse though.
No, not huge areas. Yeah,
like a whole area covered in that stuff. It's just different ball of wax, with the exception of the day he had it, but that's a different story.
Well, that wasn't that was mud.
That was just different. Mud. And then when moon dust gets wet, it turns to cake batter.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, that's exactly when it would rain. That's exactly what it would look like, man. And it was just, you know, I mean, it's part of the job, but I'd rather be where the sand was blowing all the time. You know what I mean? Like, you just got cake. Your weapon systems were fucking constantly, were constantly, like the maintenance you had to pull on, you know, just from the wind blowing that stuff around. And then, but so we basically started digging fighting positions and interlocking. You know, we started fortifying because they're like, hey, we're not leaving. You know, we're going to maintain a presence here.
Now. Yeah.
So we kind of, you know, the first couple of weeks was more, you know, the actual battle, and then it was like kind of like a short period of time where they realized they had just used poor tactics against us and really gotten hammered. So they were kind of regrouping as kind of the summer was starting to end and the fall was starting to come in.
Now, how about the Canadians and their part of the operation? How did seizing the hill kind of help them, and what was your interaction with them once you took the hill?
Oh man, like I loved working with them. We had a great relationship. I can't remember the name or specifically how their tasks were organized, but there was a group of Badgers, you know, they're APCs. I think they were called Badgers at the time. Basically their version of Strikers.
Yeah.
And so a bunch of them came up. We had a squad of snipers. And basically the snipers went up to the very top and they kind of built their, you know, they're like, hey, we're staying up here. And they kind of started building, you know, good SO / you know, an SO position up there. And I think they got some guys from up there. One of them missed a guy on, I think it was Zangabad Ghar, you know, the one that kind of looks like the dinosaur back.
That's a long shot.
That's a healthy shot.
Yeah, he was up there with he had a 338 Lapua.
Okay.
And there was a guy up there squatting and he was with binos watching us. And I don't remember how far it was, but I think at the time it would have set the record.
Yeah,
I mean that had to be over 2,000 yards.
Yeah, at least a couple clicks.
It was a long shot, and he shot once, man. He barely missed him.
Oh,
yeah, and missed him. You know what I mean? And by the time he reacquired, the guy was gone. But yeah, I mean they got hit too, man. Then the IED started, and then, but when they came up, man, they were with us the entire time. You know, they did. We kind of would fill them in between. Like my ODA kind of took, if north was 12 o'clock, we had like 3 to 9. And then our sister team who was with us had, you know, 3 to 9 on the other side, you know, the 6 o'clock. And then we would take the Canadians and kind of space them in between us. So, you know, we did the SF Vietnam build a fire base thing, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, seriously, that's what we did, you know, put out, you know, claymores, and we had mortars locked in, we started trying to burn the marijuana fields back. We started trying to clear space out a little bit at a time.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Tried for like 2 days to set that damn marijuana field on fire.
It does not burn.
Don't want to
It
burn.
would not catch. It would not catch. We tried everything. Our engineer was pissed, Dave. He was pissed. He's like, I've tried everything. Diesel fuel, incendiary freaking, you know what I mean? Like incendiary grenades, everything, man. Like it will not light. And it was coming.
Just like burn a wet magazine,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and at that time, man, they could literally get to the base of the hill in certain directions.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
They had the network, they had the tunnel systems, the irrigation ditches, the spider holes, everything dug where, could they do it in mass? I don't know. But, once we started digging in, man, Spectre just annihilated them at night. I don't know any other way to say
it's
it.
It's a good feeling.
They just did, man. And it's like, holy shit, how many of them are out there?
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like,
what do you think your big takeaway from that operation and that mission was? Like that, what's the memory or the specific thing that you just carried forward with you the rest of your career?
Wow, dude, that's a great question.
He's been sitting on that one for like 20 minutes.
Yeah. I guess the biggest thing would be when, and it's what we kind of preach, what me and my partner preach when we're teaching, whoever we're teaching, is like, hey man, everyone wants to know these fancy things that these special operations guys do. Like, what do the Rangers do differently than the 82nd? What does SF do differently than Range Battalion, or what does CAG do different than Dev Group, and all this other stuff? And it really taught me, it's like, hey man, because that was kind of like my introduction to like, real. I mean, I'd been in a few engagements previously, but nothing to that magnitude.
Right.
And it was like, hey man, you better be shit hot at the basics. Like the fundamentals or whatever you do are key. Like, there's 3 gun trucks up here. If you didn't take care of your Mark 19 and it goes down, there's 33% of our firepower. And the only thing that can get over top of any of those walls right now, so it's like, I practiced for hours on my T&E to get that thing where I needed it to get shots on, and get a burst in a specific area in a good tight group quickly. And I think, man, that's what I took away from it. And it's, it served me pretty good when I went to, OTC, and even before then going to sniper school. It's like, hey man, like shooting a rifle at distance is all about the basics. The tactics that we use, are all about the basics. And I think that's what I took away from it, man, because it showed that it worked. Hey, simple fire maneuvers. Yeah, I may not be able to hit them with this weapon system, but I can keep them pinned while the Apache circles.
Right.
And that's the stuff that I really took away from that. How a small group can do a lot of stuff by just sticking to the basics and using your assets properly. Guys like Tom Young and the pilots who are with us, and even down to our interpreters, man. So no, that's a great question. It was a fun month. It was miserable at times. It was super exciting at times. But I tell you, man, I'll never forget it. That's for sure. That whole rotation
had to be pretty foundational for you to be a part of. And all in all, I mean, it's a unique operation in terms of not just GWAT in Afghanistan, but, Kandahar and Panjwai, but the timing, like 06, the timing was just right. And it had to be a very unique operation to kind of be witness to. So that's pretty cool to get that front seat to history kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's funny, man. I've got one of my team plaque on my wall right here, and it's September 11th that year.
Oh, yeah.
We had just gotten in a gunfight, like, I don't know, an hour or two before. Nothing like super crazy, but and then we went right on top of the hill September 11th, took a team photo, American flag
Oh,
out.
yeah.
Behind us, you can see like all the marijuana fields and what it looked like before there was any like construction done.
Right.
You know, but yeah, man, I'll for sure, when I find those pictures, man, I'll put them on a zip drive or something and send them to you. It's you know, Masum, there was nothing on Masum, like there was just nothing out there, man. And it was a cool time. You know, when we started dismounting and going on foot is when I really learned what that place was like.
Yeah.
Which was about this, I'd say probably, I don't think we did any foot patrols for probably, if my memory serves me, a week. Maybe even closer to 2. But when we started pushing out, and just because even looking down at it from, you know, satellite imagery or from Sperwan looking, you don't
from the hill
understand what it looks like until you're down there. And it's you know,
it's really challenging terrain, and it's hard to describe to people why it's challenging when it's flat.
Yeah. And even like when we first got there, and we've talked about this with guys, like when you land, you get off the back of the bird and you walk up on the guard tower or whatever, and you looked out over it, you're like, oh, okay, I can do this, you know. And they had no idea like the I don't know, intricacies of
well, I mean,
place.
we had a guy, I mean, there's so many stories that are popping up in my head. We had a guy from the 10th Mountain. I believe it was the same day the jet went down. There was a fighter jet that burned in. The pilot died. And I believe there was another. I know the 10th Mountain was separated from us, and we had started to work with the 10th Mountain pretty early on in that operation as well. And one of the dudes was in a gunfight, and I can't remember if he was in a grape field or what, but he got bit on the hand by a viper, by a snake, and they had to freaking medevac him out because, I mean, you know the deal. Like every snake over there is, at least in my recollection, was poisonous.
Yeah, they had pit vipers. We found them all over.
Oh, they were all over the place, man. We'd find them. We'd find them up there. And in calf, or not in calf, but in gecko. I came around the corner once with just a towel around my waist and my flip flops on from showering. Stepped around the corner and was like, I mean, almost jumped out of my skin, man. It was right. They're all over the place, but you know, like, yeah, this guy had to get evac because he got bit on the hand by a snake in a gunfight. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of chances of that craziness going on. I mean,
like, what are the mathematical chances of getting bit by a snake in a gunfight?
Yep, there he was, man. And then, like, I forgot to mention this. It's kind of funny looking back on it, but when we were coming up through the desert, the last time we were talking, like, we had one of our ANA, AD his AK through his wrist, you know, in the middle of the desert. You know, I kept telling him, I saw him doing it. He would rest, and he'd put the muzzle. Put the muzzle like this. That's how he'd rest. And I kept telling him, because his gun truck was kind of like near mine the whole time through. I kept telling him he'd rest, and stop doing that. Jerry, our Terp was Jerry. I was like, Jerry, tell him to stop doing that. And sure as shit, man, I think we were stuck. Someone was stuck. And we were just pulling security while a vehicle in the middle was digging out of that godforsaken sand. And you hear one, pow! And the next thing you know, like and it's from inside our perimeter.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I'm like, it's behind me. I turn around, what the? And I didn't think it was. I thought it was an AD. You know, back then there wasn't a lot of that.
The green on blue stuff.
Green on blue stuff at that time wasn't a huge concern for us, really. Yeah, but AD'd right through his wrist. You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, now Riley, who was our medic, you know, he wasn't a huge. God rest his soul. He wasn't a huge fan of taking care of people who did stupid shit. You know what I mean? Like, and he's like, I told you, blah, blah, you know, like. But yeah, just I don't know. Since we talked last week, I had a bunch of just funny memories pop up. That was one of them.
I mean, going to the Afghan guys. I mean, it's actually a pretty good topic because obviously we've talked to Rusty about the ANA, and our experiences with the ANA were very different. You know, we worked with basically mostly Uzbeks and Tajiks.
Really?
So yeah, because they did this thing. They're like, well, we're gonna move people around. We're gonna you know, PCS people around the country. So the units that we worked with weren't Pashto. They weren't ethnic Pashto, and they were horrible. They didn't give a shit.
Wow.
But I know you guys worked with. They were locals. They were Kandahari, right?
Yeah, most of them were from the Kandahar province. Yeah, most of them were. We had we actually had quite a few Hazaran as well. But yeah, they were all the best that I can remember. They were all Pashtuns.
Yeah,
minus the Hazarans, but they spoke. You know, I mean, they spoke Pashtu. And you know, we had. Hey man, it's challenging. You know what I mean? It was challenging for us. I know it was challenging for them. You know, they weren't in the best situation. You know, like our Terp, we actually got him over here. He's a citizen now. He came over a couple years ago.
Thank God.
Jerry, he was our primary Terp on that rotation. You know, like he was born and raised in Kandahar. He's an educated guy.
Right.
Like he spoke like 3 or 4 languages. He was smart. You know, went to college. Hated the Taliban. You know what I mean? Like hated them with a passion. And, you know, we eventually got him over here after like the 3rd attempt on his life. They killed his uncle. They were leaving night letters left and right. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And we eventually, you know, luckily got him over here. It's only a matter of time. But
yeah, I forgot about this practice of night letters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a weird little thing the Taliban did too.
Yeah, and we would just go places, man, and you're like, we'd do a foot patrol and we'd walk and clear some place, and it was like, even when the people were allowed to come back in, we'd go to a place and it's like, you could tell people live there, but it's just a ghost town.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, where on earth did, you know, and then not occasionally, but like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, you just knew every step you were taking. They know exactly where you are. You know what I mean? And this
they're maneuvering on you. You know they're moving. They're trying to figure out where you're going.
This was before the big, you know, AP mine threat in the area. Yeah. You know, I mean, we did our best and stayed off the foot trails. I mean, they were there, but when they mined a place, primarily then it was a piece of high ground because they knew our TTP.
Sure.
We'll push someplace, and if we find any hill or anything like that, we like to get trucks on it.
Right.
You know, so we pushed into was it Maywand?
Oh yeah.
And we pushed way deep in there on like a 4-day patrol one time, and we got to a hill, and we were getting ready to push up, and I'm like, I remember calling Rusty and like, hey Rusty, like let's kick we got the mine detectors here, like it's going to take an hour, it's going to be a pain in the ass, but let's do this. And we did it. There was nothing there, but we knew they would do that. But anyway, back to like the walking around down there. It wasn't until after we left that they started getting real
crafty.
You know, like, and then, you know, my partner was in Ranger Battalion before he went to the unit, and I know the Rangers were in there a ton after we were, and it was just a target-rich environment, man. Like, you knew wherever, if you wanted to go get in a fight back then, that was, you know, like, you were pretty guaranteed to get one if you started pushing into those places.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's what was wild to me about, I mean, even going all the way back to 2012, you know, the Horn's not a big area. You know, north at its widest point, north to south, maybe 4 clicks. You know, it's like 10 clicks wide. But like, there were still places you could go that no one went. Like they it wasn't like they were contested. Like, they belonged to the enemy. Like that, and for it to be such a small piece of land, it'd be so close to Kandahar, and it's not like it's in the mountains. It's not completely inaccessible, but it just
and it's right halfway to Helmand.
Yeah.
You know, and that's we did a really big mission where basically we had gotten intel that all the wounded from our battle had been pushed west, halfway between like the Horn or the Maywand area and what was the city? And it wasn't Garesh, Kalat,
Lashkar.
Maybe one of those. Like, I never spent any time in Helmand. I know it was a rough area. But this mission was in Helmand, but it was a rural, isolated, like 10 compound village, right off of the main road. And basically, we had heard that it was a hospital. They had taken a couple of the buildings. It was hospitals, completely owned by the Taliban, but they had a hospital in there. So this was the night that Chief Warrant Officer Scott Dwyer died. He was on another ODA, and they had come down to kind of augment and help us out. And we flew out. My team was the assault. We were the assault team. We had our company A&A came in on 47s, and they were the squirter control. His team was circling. They had 2 Blackhawks. And as soon as we pushed them out, and basically they squirted out the backside, which we had a plan for, and then their bird cut him off and went into land, and he thought the bird was down, and he stepped off, and he fell, and it ended up killing him.
Oh my God!
But we did stuff like that. Like, after the main battle of, I guess, Operation Medusa, like, that kind of died down. We kind of went into a role of, like, we would push to a new area and just kind of see what would happen.
Right.
You know, and then come back, and then, you know, the next day we would go do a patrol around Reggae. You know what I mean? And then, you know, a couple times we'd go, you know, do some helo insertions and go push and clear. But it really turned into, like, that's when they really started IEDing us.
So what was y'all's experience with the IEDs? Because, I mean, that was like the defining characteristic of our deployment was IEDs. They were everywhere.
I'd say it was of that one too. And I think at the time, the amount of IED strikes that were happening, not just in like the Panjwai district, but the Kandahar province, it was like head and shoulders above anywhere else in the world, including Iraq, on just the amount of IEDs in the area. You know, and kind of what we had been told was a lot of these insurgent groups and foreign fighter groups and, you know, different networks here and there, they started picking up and cross-training with guys from Iraq.
Yeah.
And they started really figuring out how easy it was to build IEDs. you know. And most of the ones that we encountered were pressure plate.
Same.
In our area.
Yeah.
I think we found some command det, but I'd say most of them that were found or that detonated were pressure plates. And
same.
Man,
my theory is just because it was like logistically easier for them. You know, victim operated. You don't have to be there. You don't have to.
And they're really crude to make.
Oh yeah, super cheap.
And I mean, these guys would take two saw blades, some electrical tape, an inner tube, a bike inner tube, car battery, and some wire. Man, next thing you know, they're putting them everywhere, and they hammered us with them, no doubt, man. The Canadians struck several. I think we lost 3 or 4 of our ANA. Had probably 3 more who were amputees. And they just realized, like, hey, if we mass on these guys again, and we try to fight them, and I wouldn't even say conventionally, but like we try to shoot it out with them, RPGs and the stuff that we have, like. It didn't work for them.
Yeah.
Not right there. Maybe in other places it did, but the terrain worked to our favor when we could find them.
Right.
Once we found them, it wasn't that easy for them to get away because it's tricky terrain to navigate. And,
yeah.
Right. Only so many places they can go.
They're not outrunning 30 millimeter, or whatever.
No, they're not. Well, that was what always stood out to me about, how interesting, the battle for Sperwan Ghar was, is you were able to employ some of these traditional, conventional infantry tactics, like, moving on line or moving in a wedge or, using flanking or seizing the high ground. And just you had the ability to maneuver, and how quickly that changed. How he's like, okay, now we're walking in a file, and now we can't flank without having a mine clearer in front of us. And if we get into a firefight, don't run to cover by that wall because there might be an ID against the wall. You just have to stand where you are and take it. Like, just the emplacement of a $25 of a, IED, but, 1,000 of them completely changed the way we fought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I remember one time we were pushing through this area, and, we were pushing from Sperwan. We basically just formed with our ANA and 2 ODAs. We just walked off the mountain, and from north to south, facing west, just formed a line, and we just started pushing.
Wow.
And we cleared every building. We pushed out. I can't remember how far we cleared out, but it was a couple days, 2 or 3 days it took to do it. And there was some funny. The enemy decided they wanted to shoot a mortar at one of our 60s that was circling. So we're on foot.
Okay.
And I hear this boom, and I look up and I see this plume of smoke, and I'm like, that's a fucking mortar. And there was a helicopter at like 200 feet circling above it. And I can't remember what the Black Hawk was doing, but it was there.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, it just peeled off, and the next thing you know, here comes the Apache right down.
That's what he was doing.
Yeah. He was like, he was
bait.
He was bait, man. But yeah, I mean, they weren't that far from us, so there was some interesting stuff. One of the ODAs got pushed in, and they got in a bad spot, man. They got kind of surrounded. And the biggest thing for us was, at that point in time, SF lived and fought off their trucks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we might as well have been mechanized infantry to a degree. You know what I mean? Like,
start singing the Marne song.
Yeah. I mean, but for the most part, our GMVs were our lifeblood.
Home.
You know what I mean? And then you get to that place and they're not worth anything.
They're too wide.
You know, like they were too cumbersome. They were too wide. The roads were too narrow. There's nowhere to turn. Like there's no maneuverability. Like you get pinned in somewhere, you can't turn around. There's walls to your left and right everywhere you go. You know, there's no way to see something and veer around it. It's, you know, so when you go on you push out on foot, like, you know, I would never know because I was never there, but I've spoken with a lot of guys who fought in Vietnam, you know, in the jungle.
Yeah.
And, you know, you hear the stories that they say, like, hey, man, like, one of them was like, I've gotten gunfights all the time. I never saw the enemy once. You know what I mean? The other one's like, yeah, well, you know, I did because I was in this area. You know what I mean? But, like, they could just get away so quickly. And you hear what they were talking about. I'm like, it's kind of what Panjwai was like.
In 9 months, I think I physically saw the actual person 2 times, maybe 3. I saw the V kick up from the dust of a muzzle laid up on a wall, maybe
Many times.
Yeah, few times. Quite actually, that was pretty frequent. But to actually see them, was not common. You know, like to see the physical person was uncommon for us.
I mean, I look at it like, man, if 4 of my friends could be in an area, or a squad of my buddies could be in an area with some optics, you know, an M4 with a 1-6 in that area, and it was our backyard.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I mean, the air assets completely. I mean, you could never hold that ground without air or take it. I mean, I wouldn't say you could never take it, but like
you would need a huge number of people, and like you said, you'd be 75% rest cycle. Like 75% of people are 25% are sleeping, and I mean, you'd have to move with 100 people.
I mean, there could be a machine gun 200 yards away from you, sitting through 2 loopholes or 2 holes in a wall. Like, you know, like it would take you would need hours on glass to find them, and they're just waiting for that intersection. That foot trail for you to walk. I mean, it was, you know, and then you take away the ability to drive, you know, we started using 4-wheelers and we didn't have the UTVs at that time. We just had like Polaris 4-wheelers, and we would just make them our rolling ASP, man, put a bunch of Gustav rounds and a bunch of saw rounds on them, and then it would just trail us, you know, but you know, and then the hardest thing for me dismounted was like you know, I was an E6 at the time. I led, you know, a couple of our foot patrols for our ODA, but like then you split up and it's you and your buddy and you got 15 A&A. The command and the control, it was a great leadership experience for me.
Sure.
You know, it really was because you know, the next thing you know, we don't have terps. We don't have enough to be with all the elements. So, of course, they're going to be with key leaders. And, you know, I spoke enough Pashto at the time to pointy-talkie.
Right.
I knew commands with people very well, like, come to me, raise your shirt, turn around, hands up.
Sure.
But I also knew, like, yeah. Istaza, go away, man. But I knew enough commands with the squad or the 2 squads that I would go with that we knew each other well enough. But the next thing you know, you lose sight of them for 10 minutes because it's just you know. And then the irrigation ditches and the bridges that cross those for me were they were the worst thing. I'd go down 15 feet straight down in an irrigation ditch and know it was going to be a hell of a climb to get back up before I wanted to walk every one of those footpaths. You know, it was It was a cool place, man. I mean, when I say the term "cool,"
we know what you mean.
it was.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. I mean,
I would 100% visit in a different, era.
I would too. I mean,
30,
I remember
30 years from now, when whatever is going on, and the local Panjwai University is accepting transfers or whatever. I'll totally check it out.
Sure, that'll happen.
Yeah.
Probably not October 2022 though. We'll probably stick away from it. But
And I mean, I remember walking and just taking pomegranates right off the branch.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And like,
ain't got to worry about pesticides or anything.
yeah. And I remember some days waking up and like watching the sunrise and then watching the sunset from Sperwan. I'm like, there's parts of this, like, this is
beautiful,
incredibly beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially at sunrise.
Yeah, it was gorgeous, man. Like, right over and then the next day you'd be like, this is freaking Mars. Like, I just thought, I was like, this is a different planet.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on where you went, I mean, within a day's walk from Sperwan Ghar, you could literally be on the surface of Mars in the Registan. You could be like in Vietnam in the middle of a pomegranate orchard, like sweating your balls off in 150% humidity. You could be in open desert. You could be in like an ancient castle from 3,000 years ago. Like, you name it. You could be in a river, like a deep, fast running river. It's just...
And I don't know the historical aspect of it, but the rumor was when we went up there that like Alexander the Great had built Sperwan as a fort. It surely looked man built the way that it was. I mean, it doesn't look like anything else in the area. It's all like the dirt. It's not rocky. It's just like he just had people out there for 6 months just hauling buckets of mud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was,
and I've been digging into that. I'm going to get an answer. I just ordered a book off Amazon that might have some answers, but my theory, based on what I had heard, because I'd heard similar things. I've heard of the Soviets built it, but what I think it dates back probably 3,000 years ago, Alexander the Great, or somewhere in that era, when the Greeks occupied the area, and that the plateau, like where the schoolhouse is, I think the Soviets put that there. I think the schoolhouse came after the Soviets left. That
for
UN.
Sure was done.
Yeah,
after the 90s.
Yeah, because I know there's like a timestamp somewhere. It's like 93 or something.
Yeah,
you could tell. Somebody stuck their finger in the concrete and put like 93 on there or something.
Yeah, and you could just tell by the way it was built that it wasn't terribly old.
No,
and it wasn't Soviet construction either. It was very clearly like UN, US kind of like that brief period of time where we were in there. So that's my theory. I think it's very, very ancient hilltop, the main mound, and then the Soviets, the swimming pool at the top. I think that's the Soviets, and then the plateau is the Soviets, and the school was the UN, and then that would be my guess. That's my.
It was due, I guess, south past Reggae. The big mountains. There was a pass it went right through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we went and did kind of an SO mission for 3 nights, me and 3 other teammates. Basically what we were trying to do is figure out, are they using this village back here, or these groups of compounds back here to stage and bring shit through this pass into Reggae, and then from Reggae all around us, because they were IDing everything.
Right.
And we lost a teammate on that trip about a month after, in November. And we were trying to figure out how they were doing it, to try to intercept them or something.
Right.
And we went up there, man, and we were walking that ridgeline. It was a hell of a climb, but we got up top, and like there's tons on those ridgelines, tons of old fighting positions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if you guys ever went up there, man, but like
Kurz did.
You see, I mean, you'll walk, and next thing you know, we were walking under nods. We were trying to find our final position that we're going to be in. So we had the idea of where we wanted to be, you get up there, and the next thing you know, like you're walking, and you like look down, what the fuck? What is that? You know, and it's like shine your laser in it. You're like, oh, and then you'll see the rocks built around it. You know, it's just a ranger grave right up there on the side of the mountain. They're all over the place, man.
Yeah. I saw them all the time in, so when I went back in 2017 as a pilot, so flying in Nangarhar, Eastern Afghanistan, everywhere, every ridge line, you could see the trails. It goes right up to it, and there's a fighting position. At that time, though, they were smart enough not to put their dishkas there anymore.
Yeah.
In Farah province, I found caves thousands of year old caves with rocks stacked in front of them, overlooking paths going through the mountains. Like, warfare doesn't change.
No.
It really doesn't.
No. I mean, yeah. And we would get frustrated, man, because towards the end of that rotation, we couldn't even like bait them into shooting us, towards the end of it. They weren't going to do it. The fighting season was kind of over. They had just gotten hammered. And it was like, there were so many IEDs in the area. It was, I can't even tell you, 2, maybe 3 of those big, I can't remember what they're called, but they look like they're almost like front loaders. The big mine detectors up front.
Oh yeah, the Huskies.
Yeah. I mean, 2 or 3 of those, you know what I mean? And then, I don't know how it was when you guys were there, but they had kind of, towards the end of it, they were just, we'll throw out some mines here. We'll take some pop shots when you're on a foot patrol, just to let you know we're still here. But yeah, I mean, going back to what you said, like, the last half of that rotation for sure was pretty much all about IEDs.
Yeah.
So on the back end of that, you come back. What was the rest of your military career like, if you don't mind giving us a little tidbit?
No, so when I came back from that rotation, I went to the level 1 sniper course, which SODIC is what it was called then. They may have changed the acronym now.
Somebody has to get promoted, so they got to change the acronym.
Yeah. It used to be called the Special Operations Target Interdiction Course, which is basically where all the snipers, the big army had their school in Benning, and then Rangers, SF guys, CAG guys could go to the one that's right there off Bragg. And I met a couple guys in my class who were operators in the unit. And they were kind of the first 2 that I'd ever met in person. I know I'd seen some before, been introduced to some before socially, but didn't know any of them well. And I just kind of, started asking these guys some questions, man, like trying not to look like, a private, but,
like a fangirl.
Because I only had at that time, I had about 3.5, about 4 years in.
Yeah,
maybe 4.5.
I mean, if you hadn't gone 18X, I mean, the amount of time you had in, you would have been like a specialist,
Yeah, probably.
Maybe probably an E5, but
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I mean, it was. I came in as an E4 because I had a degree, which didn't mean anything.
Right. I mean, 18X, you come out as an E5 anyway, right? From the
course. And then when you start the Q course, like halfway through the Q course, all the PFCs who were X-rays got promoted to specialists anyway.
Right.
And basically the Q course, when you're a Spec 4, you're a private. Like you are a private. And then when you graduate the Q course, like I remember, I don't know if they do it differently now, but they present you with your certificate, and we got a completion of the Q course, completion of SEER school, and also a promotion certificate, like all in one bang.
Right.
Because you have to be an NCO to be on the ODA. So, and then I met those guys, and I was like, I wanted to try it, man. I wanted to try it. It sounded like a cool job that I would enjoy. More direct action related.
Sure.
Than kind of, all SF does direct action, but it's not what most of what they do.
Right.
So I went to selection. Didn't make it the first time. Was kind of at my 5-year. I was getting ready to, I was thinking about getting out. But I went back a second time and was fortunate enough to make it through. And then I worked out there, from the kind of the time I started till I left was right at about 3 years. And then my last 2.5, almost 3 years, I spent as an instructor. I went over to the school is called SFOD-D, which is a sister course of SODIC. So SFOD-D is what qualified guys to go to the SIF companies, which used to be called the SIF companies, which got changed to the CRIF. And I think now they may be disbanded. I'm not 100% sure. But basically, it was.
And what does that acronym stand for, or either version of it?
SFOD-D or SIF?
SIF.
SIF, Commander in Extremis Force. So basically, that was a dedicated. Each group had a company called the SIF. This is back in the day.
Sure.
And it was one company, which was 6 ODAs, and they were a specialized reconnaissance and direct action / hostage rescue unit that augmented special missions units. So, they had 10th group had a team in, I think it was Stuttgart. First group had a team in Okinawa. Everyone else was CONUS, but they were basically, the CQB guys of special forces, and that's what they kind of focused on.
Right.
So to go to one of those companies, you had to be qualified and go through the school that I ended up teaching at. I worked out there. I was like a primary CQB instructor. I taught the hand-to-hand program out there for a year. We did, obviously, I taught the pistol and rifle marksmanship, the night vision stuff, all that stuff. I got to a point where I hit 10 years in, just over 10 years, and my next re-enlistment was going to have to be in depth. And, I have a daughter that's autistic, severely autistic, and at the time she had kind of just been diagnosed, and there was just a lot of uncertainties going on and in life in general. And, I wasn't ready to commit for another 10 years. Just wasn't, I miss it every day. I don't regret getting out, but, it was, the Army was good to me, man. I had a good time, the whole time I was in. Got to do some fun stuff. And, some of my funniest memories will be overseas, with war comes some bad memories as well, but that's the nature of the beast,
Right. You got to have the good ones to offset the shitty ones.
Yeah. I mean, I remember sitting up with my buddy Bill, who he was our team sergeant the whole trip, or the whole time during Medusa, and he's a funny old boy from Texas, you know what I mean, and just sit up and just laughing about standing in moon dust. Like, he just looked down with his accent. You don't believe this fucking shit we're standing in, with his Southern Texas accent, and just laughing. Having those. We had a battery of 155s come up there, and they would. It was 2 of them, and they were airlifted in. They set them in, and they would shoot those things all the time. They wouldn't give us warning. They'd shoot loom rounds at night.
Oh God!
Or they'd shoot in at to TRP their to build target reference points.
Right.
They were awesome to have up there, but they wouldn't give a net call. And you'd be sleeping, and the next thing you know, they were right behind the school building.
Oh, man.
So we slept in the schoolhouse, and you'd be dead asleep, and that thing would go off, and it would the walls would just rattle, and it would I remember Rusty got up one night. He was so pissed. He was like in his boxers. He didn't even put his flip flops on. I don't think he stormed in there, and he came back in 10 minutes later. And he's like, "That won't happen again." Because it would rattle you, man.
Yeah, naturally.
And then, so yeah, some great times, especially in the portion that we're talking about.
You had a pretty, for a 10-year career, you went a lot of places and did some really impressive things. How did that, experience in 2006 kind of carry you through a lot of stuff? I mean, you were already in an ODA, you had already gone through a selection. Now you're facing the prospect of going through, another selection, being a new guy all over again. I mean, how did your experiences kind of carry you through all that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I tell you, man, when you see I guess, a brother of yours, and I say that in every sense of the word, you guys know how it is. When you see someone you care about, you love, it can harm you and it can hurt you, and it's done both to me, I will tell you.
Sure.
Honestly. But it was definitely a motivating factor to a degree that I wanted to prove to myself I could go to, I guess, a certain level, but I kind of felt like, in a weird way, it's what I needed to do to earn it. You know what I mean? So it definitely drove me. I believed. I loved being in a small team. I loved the team. Like, I loved being on a team. And, when I got out of the military for a very short period of time, I wasn't on one, and it messed me up, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it really did, but, I've gotten that again. I work for a company that had multiple guys like me that, we get to work together, and it was awesome. And I work together now with, a guy we are very similar, but we go on trips now, man. And it's like, we laugh at, like, it's like stupid private stuff that we laugh at. Like, did you see that guy, his draw stroke, and like his holster fell off, and like, I'll come to tears over something like that. You know what I mean? And I obviously I don't try to do it in front of people, but
sure.
But yeah, I tell you, man, like, it's everything I learned in the Army kind of has set me up for, I think, really helped me hone my skills in as far as what I do for a living now. And yeah, man, I mean, the leadership, even on the small level, what good ones are, what bad ones are, how it can make or break a small team.
Sure.
Like, that stuff's important, man. You know how it is with your squad. You don't have to go be fishing buddies on Saturday, but you better.
Right.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There's got to be the level of trust has got to be there with everyone, and
So, you transitioned out, like you said, that first year without a team was, kind of a transition period for you in some ways, but you hit your strokes and you settled into what works for you, man. Like, what's maybe your takeaway from transitioning out that was the biggest benefit for you, or what was the healthiest thing for you of transitioning into the civilian world
that I took away from the Army?
Sure.
I think one of the biggest things, if you want something, I did learn that if you want something bad enough, like, if it's meant to be and you put in the work, you can get it.
Yeah.
If it's not meant to be, that could be breaking your ankle in selection, your second trip up there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're physically good enough to make it. You know what I mean? It happens. But it just, I I'm a firm believer, not getting like too spiritual with that stuff because I'm not super spiritual, but I do believe that kind of everything happens for a reason. And like me getting to go become an instructor in front of fundamentally my peers,
right?
You know, like they were all E5s to E7s in that course, and they were coming. You know, I was teaching them shit that they were getting ready in a month from now to go do overseas. So I think the confidence that if I really want something bad enough, it's attainable if it's supposed to happen. And then two, like just the skills. I mean, I didn't grow up shooting, man, and or know anything about tactics. And I love being a teacher. And I really got to not only learn the skills, get to do them, get to teach them in the Army. And it's just really kind of bled over into what I do now. And I think it's, it's been a positive in my life post-military from an instructional standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that theme kind of strings through your entire professional career. You're a teacher before the military, and you're teaching in the military and teaching after the military.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Like I go do jiu-jitsu, and I'm not very good at it, but I try. You know what I mean? I know a little bit, and then this brand new guy comes in, and you get paired up with them for the training session, and they don't know anything except for how to lock their arms and spaz out. And it's like showing someone one thing, and it's like, oh my God, that like they pick that up and they'll remember that, and that's kind of the biggest takeaway, I would say gratifying thing from I'm still on a team, man. I still feel like I'm part of some type of, for lack of a better term, some type of fight, whether that's against, some crazy kid that wants to go shoot up a school again, or, against drug dealers, and the good guys are going after them. And, it's fun, man. It's fun.
And I don't think actually we've even mentioned like, what do you do now? So, I mean, what is your job and the company that you work for?
Yeah. So, I got out in 2014, and I started working in the private sector for a company. I linked up with a guy that I went to the Q course with, who was running a training company, and I started teaching kind of under his banner. And then a year ago, I linked up with this guy, Charlie Ross, who recently retired. He just finished up, came in at 17 and a half years old, like right out of high school, was in the range of retiring, and spent, I think, 15 years in Delta. So he and I just kind of linked up, and we started our own company. It's called Hades Consulting. We taught our first class in February of 21. So we're pretty new, man. Basically about a year old. And fundamentally, we offer training to law enforcement, military, and also civilians as well. I'd say the most of what we do, most of what we did in our first year was train law enforcement. But so we do everything from like pistol marksmanship, carbine or rifle shooting. So think about, your standard M4 that a patrol guy or a SWAT guy's carrying, Charlie's a sniper guru. He does some long range stuff. I kind of help with that. It's not really my bread and butter. I was just sniper qualified, but I never served as a sniper, and he did. Right. And then the whole tactics side of it. So everything from open air small unit tactics, which we did a bunch of this fall. And that's everything from fire maneuver and, squad attack. You guys know it is right out of the Ranger handbook, man. Right. And then obviously the CQB side of it as well. So we don't have like a home facility. We kind of just travel around and go wherever guys want to bring us in and do it, man. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. We love doing it. And we're looking forward to starting our second year, here in a couple weeks. So
that's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, until I get tired of traveling and sleeping in hotel rooms and stuff like that, like it's a fun job. And like I said, man, it makes me still feel like I'm part of something bigger, and it's cool to see guys come to a 3-day class, and you can see some progression in certain things and some light bulbs coming on. It's like, yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, man, we have guns and travel a lot.
Have gun will travel.
Yeah. But yeah, man. Love the outdoors, man. Trying to get back into hunting and fishing as much as I can. I was kind of gotten away from it over the last 3 or 4 years, but I just love, being outdoors and doing whatever, man. Got a brand new puppy who's keeping me busy, so that's always nice. Yeah.
Well, I think the way we usually close these things out is just to kind of let our guests take it and run with it, and if there's anything we didn't cover that you want to talk about. I know you mentioned the thing in South Texas that you work with, those guys down there. Yeah. So, whatever you want to just plug, man, or have at it, just, floor is yours.
Well, I appreciate it. First off, I want to thank you guys for having me on. I remember, I'm not big on Instagram. I don't post a lot of stuff, like I said last time, and I can't remember if you guys popped up as something, and I was like, Panjwai Podcast, or maybe an old friend sent it to me. I can't remember, and I saw it, and I clicked on it. I was like, man, that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? I thought it was pretty interesting that you guys had started this thing and kind of, kept it to a group. I'm sure if they had social media, 50 years ago, guys from the Tet Offensive, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever, would be doing the same thing, so I think it's cool, man. It helps people reconnect. And, I know I've reconnected with one guy kind of since this started, and, it's been fun. I appreciate it. And, one of the other things that I'm pretty passionate about, and I know my business partner Charlie is as well, is kind of the negative effects that people, soldiers and also first responders can have from what they've chosen to do. You know what I mean? Like, we all volunteered to go into the military. None of us were drafted in, and whether we like it or not, war is what it is, and you get what you ask for when you sign up, especially want to be in the infantry or a special operations unit. And law enforcement guys have the same understanding, but we still, I think it's come a long way, but there's still some misconception as to what, PTSD or whatever the hell they're calling it nowadays is, what it's not. But, fundamentally, most people that are dealing with some form of unprocessed trauma, especially when they work in a very strong camaraderie-based line of work, like the military or law enforcement or whatever, they tend to self-medicate to kind of deal with what's going on. It's human nature to do it. You know what I mean? I've done it plenty. I've had plenty of friends who've done it too. And one of the things that we like to do is spread the word about that place in Texas. It's called Warrior's Heart. And I went to it in 2016, and it's the only place in the country that only allows active duty veterans, current law enforcement guys, former law enforcement guys, firefighters. I mean, when I went, there was a guy from Long Island who was a firefighter. There was a cop from, Austin, Texas. There was me. Believe anyone even EMS. Guys who ride around in ambulances and stuff like that. They're allowed to go. TRICARE. They're on TRICARE, and most people that have health insurance, their insurance are covered. Basically, all it is it's a substance abuse and treatment facility that only caters to that clientele, and they really do a good job. And I only know this because of historical family stuff, but this place does not just teach you how to not use whatever you use. They dig more into the why behind it. So they're gonna, and I think that's what makes it so much, or so special, in conjunction with the fact that only certain people can go. And I just like to spread the word on that, man, because if veterans are listening, or whoever, it may be them, it may be someone they know. I think the word's gotten out pretty well about the place, but there's still people who don't know about it. I mean, I talked to a guy a couple weeks ago, just got put in touch with him, and I was like, hey, man, have you ever heard of this place? He's a veteran. His friend put me in touch with him. He'd never heard of it. And I think he got down there not too long ago. So that's pretty much it, man. I appreciate you allowing me to share that. It's something that Charlie and I we're pretty passionate about it, just because, we've seen the people who weren't shown the doorway, and we all know what happens with that eventually. So I appreciate you let me share that, and it's been awesome, man. A lot of old memories that just have kind of come in from just that month of my life, that I hadn't even thought about, that bomb in the top of that mountain. I hadn't thought about that in forever, and I'm sure tonight something else will pop up. Man, I should have told him this one. That was a good one. But, it's cool, man. And it's, hopefully one day we'll be able to turn back and go, there was some type of difference made in that area. I don't know if that ever occurs. I'm more of a realist, but I know when we were there, and I know when you guys were there, we did the best we could to accomplish the mission, and whatever that means now, it means now. but back then, it's it was just,
well, like we say, I mean, you did your job. You as an operator, us as an infantry guy, or me as a pilot, you have a job. This is what you go out and this is what you do.
Yep.
And your job is, there are people whose job is to win the war and make those policies. But fortunately for us, that wasn't our job.
Yep.
So, I can sleep firmly at night knowing I did my fucking job. You did your fucking job. And,
absolutely.
If it's keeping people up at night, still talk to somebody. It's, reframe the problem.
Yeah.
In a way that's more realistic.
Yeah. I mean, just in that Panjwai area, man, there's been a lot of American blood spilled. You know what I mean? A lot of it in the last, whatever it was, 15 years. And I look at it this way: if it kept the Taliban from taking their home, what they wanted, fuck it, it was worth it. You know what I mean? There's no bigger middle finger in your face than, we're going to come into where you formed this thing, and we're going to put bases right, probably within every 500 meters of where Mullah Omar formed the Taliban.
Yeah.
And we're going to put, and every day we're going to fly a flag up on that hill. That's kind of the way I look at it. But some cool times there, and yeah, man, I really appreciate it. It's been cool. This is the first podcast I've ever done. So
good, it's a good place to start.
Man.
We're not quite Joe Rogan, but
pressure's
low.
No,
we're also not out of the basement, out of our mama's basement. So
no,
we're
man,
kind of somewhere in the between.
Yeah, you guys do a good job, man. I mean, extremely professional. When the box came in, I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't know if it was going to be kind of like a Peltor system with the boom mic.
We thought about it.
Yeah, and then
comes with a helmet with nods too.
Well, it's funny. It's funny because when I packed this stuff to take it to Puerto Rico, I have to make sure I have everything here. So I did like an inventory of it. Like, yep, this. I get down there and I take it out of my bag and I'm like staging it because I was down there for 4 or 5 days, and I'm like, where's the boom mic? I kept looking at this headset like, the speaker was like staring at my face.
Right.
But I kept thinking there was a boom. I was for sure I'd seen a boom mic when I packed it. I couldn't find it. I'm like, oh dear God, here we go. Like,
well, fortunately for you, there's another box going around that has a pair of headphones that does have like a boom mic that retracts into it.
Oh, really?
So that really would have fucked you up.
Yeah. But yeah, man. I mean, like the camera and the mic system, it's good, man. I hope you guys, I don't know what your next step is, man, but any way that I can help you whatsoever, spread the word. I'll throw out something on Instagram. I mean, I don't have like a huge presence on there, but
we appreciate it.
I would love to put you in touch with Brian Myers, man. Like, if there was one other dude, I mean, there's other guys that on my team, man, that are awesome. You know what I mean? The only reason I say Brian is because he's been back in there a few times.
Oh, interesting.
He was there during Medusa, but I still talk with Dave Smith. He was in the book. I don't know if you remember him, but a few years after, Dave got blown up real bad and lost his arm.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then he got medically, 2 years. So he was on the truck with me, Bill. He was driving. I was in the turret when Bill got killed. And that happened like, we weren't 300, maybe 300 meters off that hill where it happened. But Dave became a team sergeant like 2 years later. He went to a different team, got promoted, became a team sergeant. Fucking him and this other guy on his team, man, one of them stepped on something up in, I think they were Cobra, Firebase Cobra up in Aruzgan. And it blew him up real bad. But he's living up in Virginia. He's doing good, man. But there's Jude Voss is still out there. I see him on Instagram occasionally. So whatever I can help you with, I would love to help you guys. And
we appreciate it, man. And like, we really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
You're a busy guy. You travel all the time, making the time. We really appreciate it. It's a unique viewpoint that I think was going to really be very resounding with like a lot of guys that have been there, because it's sometimes just kind of hard to reconcile until you've seen it through other people's viewpoints. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, and one last coincidental. I don't really believe in coincidences, but one of the guys I ran into at that place in Texas, man, was an 11 Bravo, who I think 09, 010 spent I think a year out of that place, man, and it was a rough trip for him. And I know for a fact if he's out on Instagram and he finds you guys, like, he'll be, you know what I mean? Like, it's a cool thing, particularly, for people who've been there. And hey, man, everyone's got their Sperwan Ghar or somewhere, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was the one place I remember my whole military career was like, this is what like just true warfare is in every aspect, from the gunfights on the vehicles to clearing buildings, you know what I mean? Like the whole gamut, in a pretty freaking tough place to get around in. So it was cool.
That sounds good, Zach. We appreciate it again, and I'm glad you made the time for us, and it's been good to talk to you, man. It's been a privilege.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Season 3 of the Panjwai Podcast. We appreciate you sticking with us all the way to the end of the episode, but just one more thing before you go, please hit the like and subscribe button, and make sure that you are following us on our social media.